We're going to talk about vaccinations and viruses and all that. You've got a whole bunch of dogs.
I have a lot of dogs. I have a lot of sheep. And yes, vaccinate all of them. Yeah, I think it's absolutely essential. I don't believe in any links between autism or anything other thing that whack jobs can come up with. No, I totally believe in vaccination, and definitely keep my monthly tablets going into my dogs to make sure that there's no heartworm, there's no fleas.
Great. Excellent. You're a good doggy daddy.
I try to be.
Well, I caught up with Dr. Jo Sillence, who's CEO of Pets Australia, and asked her the hard question about parvovirus. Parvovirus, I thought we'd eradicated that in Australia. Is a dumb question.
Parvovirus is not only not eradicated, it seems to be making a comeback. There's a pretty major outbreak right now, but it's on the back of 2 or 3 years of rising rates of parvovirus across the community.
Why is that happening?
That's a really good question to which nobody's got a single sort of sentence answer, because there's not a lot of research going on that's being published. But people are arguing that it might be related to 3-yearly boosters. They're arguing that it might be related to people not vaccinating anymore. They're arguing that it might be related to a couple of cold, damp winters. Irrespective of what the cause is, the bottom line is that there's a heap of parvovirus out there in the environment, probably more than we've had for a long while. And that animals that are not fit are breaking down with parvo, and that community immunity, that reason you vaccinate to protect everybody else's pets, is too low.
I had heard that parvo can be spread literally by bird droppings. Is that true? How does that happen?
Oh, worse than that. Parvo is one of the tiniest viruses there is, and it's as tough as. I mean, most disinfectants don't touch parvo very well, and because it's so minute, it can actually carry on dust. It can carry on shoes, it can carry on car tyres, it can carry when dogs sniff each other's bottoms. It's just so pervasive, and we've had a number of breeding operations that have had a single case of parvo and have literally had to shut the doors for 2 years. Wow. It's just it's that difficult to get rid of. The real thing with parvo is it's very deadly. More than 80% of cases have the potential for death. And it's very difficult to get rid of, so the only thing to do is to stop it happening in the first place, and that's vaccination, good quarantine and disinfection.
And where's the outbreak happening, or places, if it's more than one?
Last year there were sporadic outbreaks right up and down the eastern seaboard. This year there's been a quite spectacular outbreak in the Hunter region in New South Wales. And they've had 300 cases in 8 weeks, and that's plus. They're just the ones that were reported on the Disease Watchdog. Now, Virbac, the company, runs Disease Watchdog, where veterinarians actually report cases. So we reckon they're picking up maybe 50% of the cases that are happening out there, and that's a pretty big outbreak. But we're also seeing spot reports, and by that I mean 10 to 20 animals from southwestern New South Wales, parts around Melbourne, and parts around northern New South Wales. So that the bottom line is it's happening. It's out there, it's real, it's a clear and present danger.
Is it dangerous to humans?
No, it's not dangerous to humans, except that humans can be dangerous to dogs because they'll pick it up on their feet and walk it across to the next dog. No, it's not dangerous to humans. It's pretty revolting. I wouldn't like to have to clean up after it. Oh. But no, it can't infect humans. There are other varieties of parvo that can affect cats and pigs, but the dog parvo will not affect cats and pigs.
So how can we keep our pets safe? You know, I don't want my dogs getting parvo.
Exactly.
Look, the best advice at the moment is, irrespective of what your standard boosting regime is, whether it's 1 year or 3 years, it is a good idea to make sure that you've got a vaccine certificate less than 12 months old. Just in the face of an outbreak, it's normal to increase your vaccination. And the reason is this: it's not like a blanket that covers you up and protects you. An antibody in blood has an actual physical reaction with a germ. Okay, so the more germs there are out there, the more antibodies you need to physically attach to them. So what most of us are doing is putting an extra, sometimes unscheduled booster into our dogs at the moment. And that's just to make sure that they've got the maximum number of antibodies to cope with this massive load of germs that's coming at them from the environment.
Mm. For people who don't know the symptoms, I mean, what's the worst case scenario and how would you spot those symptoms?
Parvo symptoms can actually be way more difficult to spot than most people realise. When most people talk about parvo, they have this mantra, bloody diarrhea, and they're not just swearing. We're talking about putting blood out in the faeces. And a number of people talk about a distinctive parvo smell, and I've smelt it, and once you've smelt it, you'll never forget it. But that's only part of a spectrum of symptoms. The problem is that parvo attacks rapidly dividing cells. Now, of course, in puppies, that's heart cells. So in puppies under 4 to 6 weeks of age, what you will often see with parvo is sudden death. They'll just get up one morning and die. And with heart failure, complete utter heart failure, kind of like a heart attack, but not the same way. In young and adult dogs, it can attack the rapidly dividing cells. Of course, in young and adult dogs, the fastest dividing cells are the intestine. And so what you get is the intestine starts to leak toxins into the body way before you get bloody diarrhea. And so we've had a number of juvenile dogs in particular go from well to dead in 8 hours, but without bloody diarrhea. So if you see bloody diarrhea, the animal's already 80% of the way to being dead, but you might not necessarily see it. The animal might go down so fast that it'll actually die before the bloody diarrhea hits the deck. So the bottom line is this. One, if you've got a vaccinated animal and it goes down very depressed and possibly vomiting, I'd move pretty quickly. I'd go straight to the veterinarian, because if you can get in before the bloody diarrhea, you've got a better chance of survival. And the other one for puppies, of course, people say, oh, don't give the bitch a booster because it leaves the puppies at risk. Well, that may well be the case, and you can always add an extra vaccine to cover that, but I would be giving all bitches a booster before the pups are born.
Okay.
As a final thing, we do know that the Hendra virus is also raising its ugly head, and people are even saying things like rabies. You know, in a nutshell, do we need to be worried about rabies in Australia?
Hendra virus belongs to the family Lysiviridae, and in the same way as you've got lots of different parvos, you can have lots of different Lysiviridae. One of them is Hendra, another one is rabies, so the two are cousins, but they really don't like to talk to each other. They're not great friends. And so if we vaccinate for rabies, it's not protective for Hendra. Rabies in this country would be an absolute genuine disaster because of all the feral animals we've got. And remember that rabies affects any warm-blooded animals, whereas Hendra has a very specific life cycle that cycles through bats and horses. So the media that have been reporting Hendra as Australian rabies is grossly misleading. Has nothing to do with what we know and understand as rabies. Hendra is an entirely different virus and an entirely different disease that just happens to belong to the same big clan.
As always, words of wisdom from Dr. Joanne Silent, CEO of Pets Australia. Thank you so much, Jo.
Thank you.